That's there. I hadn't pushed the button. There we go. Hi, welcome everyone. We're gonna wait a few minutes until everyone connects. In the meantime, I want to say welcome to our new event with Real Estate IQ. Here's a welcome. I know it's a Saturday and we all want to learn, so I will do this very quick. And also people are starting to connect. So if you want to put it in the chat what you do and where you're from, that'd be great. So we get to know each other a little better or do a little networking. Today we will be talking about owner financing through wraparound mortgages with Marilyn Phipps and Scott Horn. We will be presenting them just in a few minutes. But first I want to invite you guys to our Real Estate IQ newsletter. You can scan that QR or I will send you the link in the chat. And our social media accounts, we are also here. Oh, here is Ingrid. Hi, Ingrid. She's from Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for letting us know and presenting yourself. I will be sending all these links via chat, so no worries. Let me just show you a little bit about what we do. So we are a lead generation, education, and support company focused on helping real estate investors like you find deals within 90 days. Our off-market listings arrive daily in your inbox with the skip trace included. And you can use them for wholesaling, house flipping, or renting. Our main locations are Texas, Florida, Georgia, and Utah. And if you'd like a one-on-one consultation, please put yes in this poll that's about to appear right now. And we will be contacting you within the week and explaining a little bit more about it. So let's get to it. Today we have Marilyn Phipps and Scott Horn. They will be talking about owner financing through wraparound mortgages. Marilyn is originally from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, Central America. She moved to the USA in '97 looking for new opportunities. From '97 to 2012, Marilyn spent time in New Jersey and later moved to Houston, where she jumped from job to job, and she became a certified as a tax preparer. Scott Horn is an attorney. And Marilyn, if you want to later talk a little bit more about yourself, I have this until here. And Scott Horn is an attorney with Horn and Associates, PC in Dallas, Texas. He has been practicing law in Texas for over 30 years as a title company fee attorney. Mr. Horn has had multiple title offices within the Dallas-Fort Worth area and has closed thousands of transactions, allowing him exposure to all types of residential and commercial transactions. His title focus is on providing quality services and utilizing his best efforts to ensure every transaction closes. His law firm focuses in working with realtors and real estate investors in all types of real estate acquisitions and investing, including structuring and drafting traditional. So it's a pleasure to have you both here. We are so looking forward to this webinar, and just take it away. Thank you so much.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Everybody can hear me all right?
Yes,
Yes?
perfect.
Okay, perfect. So only successful people can do what you guys are doing here, showing up on a Saturday morning while other people is just, just relaxing for the day. So congratulations for you guys to show up to this amazing event where you guys want to learn how to do deals, owner finance, how to structure these deals. I want to talk a little bit about myself. Actually, it's been a long time that I don't hear that I was doing taxes at some point, but my degree is in electricity. I graduated in Honduras, and then I came here not knowing any English, okay? And not wanted to learn English, but I needed to make money, so I had to learn. So very, very fast came here, and it was being a while, like probably 20 years ago. 25 years ago. I was 20. Anyways, I came here and I look for new opportunities, but my degree is in electricity. Electricity is electrical. I never put in electricity on a house, by the way. I just got the degree, and then I started working as a purchasing agent on the electrical field, buying and selling electronics and electrical components. That's one part of me that probably some of you don't know. But because I like to have long nails and look, so pretty, the electrical field wasn't really for me. So I worked, but I was working as a purchasing agent in the office. And then after that, I got laid off. I came into real estate investing when I got laid off. I have 2 children back then, and I didn't have money to start investing. So how you go by not having no money to invest and then start investing, right? So I did it with actually wholesaling. I was shocked by the fact that somebody actually could make money by finding deals and then doing assignment of contracts without even to have to hold a license. I am not a licensed agent. People think that I am, but I'm not. So far, my company name is Sukasa USA. I launched this company on 2013, and I'm being servicing the investing community to provide for wholesale deals and houses that are fixer-uppers. And I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I do trainings, and I also do buying and hold. I do subject to owner finance. Throughout the years, I have created a few notes. And honestly, between renting properties and doing owner finance, my favorite deals are owner finance, because once you do that job, you just need to do it one time and then get paid over and over and over and over again for 30 years. So we're gonna talk today with Scott. Actually, he's the best. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here today. Actually, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here, because you have all the expertise that probably, I have some experience, but you have all the experience. So that's amazing to have you here. Why you don't tell us a little bit about yourself, Scott?
So thanks for being here. I love listening to a gal like you who, came out of Central America. You came here and boom, you get a chance to explode. It just shows you that anybody can do it if you have the drive and the willingness, right?
Yes.
And in this business, Marilyn, you have to have that drive, you have to have that desire, and you have to have perseverance to want to succeed. It just doesn't fall out of the skies in your lap, most of the time. And you have to go out and hunt it, know what you're doing, and, learn how to do this business and become a true student of the industry. So just a little bit about me. My background is, my degrees, I'm a civil engineer who became a lawyer, who after 1 year having a job, had to go out and hunt, because back in 1985, 86, as most people on this line probably don't remember, there was a huge recession that hit that just crashed real estate. And I was in the real estate industry at that time. And when you get laid off, what you don't understand when you're young, that you don't know why you can't get a job in the middle of a major recession because no one's hiring. But anyway, went on through for a long time, and along the way, started buying houses, kind of like you. And really, it was out of necessity. I just wanted to make a living and start things going. A lot of people think that I've been successful in this industry because I have a law degree. And that is about as far from the truth as it comes. It's been just basic hard work. And so back in probably 1988, 89 is when I started buying my first house. And one house turned to 2 to 4 to 8. And over the years, we have bought some 3,700 single family homes. I will tell you the great majority of those have all been rehabs, anywhere from, the low end of $5,000 to $250,000. So you get well versed. And of course, you take those houses back occasionally, whether it's a rental property or whether it was a seller finance property of some type. And so to date, we have probably done some 8,000 plus rehabs. All that means is you get a lot of knowledge base of construction costs and things of that nature. And of course, that's one thing that I think, anybody who's going to be in this industry, you have to learn that. And I get laughed at a lot, Marilyn, because I go and I walk up and down the aisles at Home Depot and at Lowe's and at Floor & Decor. And I do my best to recognize prices and whatnot and things that are available or trends and various things along the way, because you have to know your pricing out there. So I've had the chance to buy a lot of houses over our career. I will tell you, in hindsight, when you look back, we have done 98% some type of creative financing. Here in Texas, it started out with lease purchases and lease options, which have become problematic under our property code. We used to do contract for deeds and owner financing. And, that got changed in 2001 and other things changed along the way, and it went into more of direct seller financing. And after the 2008, 2009 real estate crash, we had the opportunity to really push out the owner financing part because nobody in Texas was doing seller financing at that time, but for us. And so we pushed that out into the marketplace because it was what the marketplace needed at that time, because nobody could buy a house and get a loan. It was the only way to really transact business. And that was, as I see it, really the creation of the subject to world is where that really came into being and blossomed at that point in time. So having bought and financed a lot of houses, both with bank financing, private financing, through creative mechanisms, we became Texas's hard money lender, largest lender from about 1997 through 2009. We've done about 4,000 plus hard money loans. Today, we're back in the hard money lending business under a company called GOAT Funding, GOAT Funding. We are real estate attorneys, and all we focus on is the creative finance business. We focus on landlord tenant for our people who are doing creative financing and foreclosures throughout the Texas marketplace. And that's all we have time to do. Today, we are a direct title operation under a new company called First Option Title. We do title business throughout all of Texas and nationally as well. So along the way with all these things, especially as we're going to be talking about creative finance, we have closed in my law firm here some 10,000 creative finance transactions, whether that's the lease purchase, lease options, or contract for deeds, wraparound mortgages, subject to mortgages, seller finance mortgages, and all things in between. And so what's fun today is, yeah, we're lawyers and title guys. I get it. That's great to have that knowledge base. But we're also the investor that goes out and walks the walk and talks the talk every day. I was just out driving to the office this morning and I never come the same way. as if you're driving around, I'm seeing 2 yards with high grass kind of in disrepair. So of course, driving for dollars, you know, how do you find leads? How do you create leads? Whatever it takes to make things happen. You never know when those things occur. So, but I get a chance today to blend both the real life practicality of our business, you know, lead generation, talking to sellers, talking to buyers, marketing, selling, rehabbing, but blending it with the legal side, which is what is so important today, because there are so many compliance issues. And for that, Marilyn, we have another company here. It's called the ownerfinancenetwork.com, which is a vertically integrated company that provides legal and title services, Note Pro, which is for loan structuring, the loan processing part of our owner finance industry, loan servicing, and a new thing that came into play in 2022 that we call OFN lending to comply with the new wrap mortgage lending compliances here in Texas. So the fun part is we kind of self-encompass all things, you know, single family residential investing. And it's fun to get a chance to talk about all these items as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, how many of you feel so proud to have this man in front of us this morning? I don't know how I pulled that off. I call it destiny and good luck. But definitely that experience is just amazing. So let's pick up your brain for a little bit here. I want to know, what is the most important thing for you and your knowledge to do a deal or do an owner finance deal? Where we start? Let's start from there.
You know, you have to look at two things, Marilyn, because our marketplace has changed drastically in the last year. We are both a cash buyer, and by cash, usually that means using a small institutional bank, which I think every investor needs to learn how to develop lines of credit at small institutional banks. And we are also, as I said earlier, we are a creative finance buyer where we're buying homes subject to the existing debt and items of that nature. Now, if you look back 12 months ago, on a cash basis, we're buying houses at about 80 cents on the dollar. Here in Dallas, the going rate was 82 to 84 cents actually. In Houston, where you are, the going rate was about 77 cents on the dollar, just a little bit different in pricing, up to the 80% range. Well, at that time, with bank financing being at, let's say, 5%, 5.5%, those deals worked great. Well, today, when bank rates have gone from 5.5 up to 9% plus, you know, to equate the two deals together for cash flow, you now have to buy that same house that you were buying for 80 cents on the dollar between 68 and 70 cents on the dollar, which means it's much more difficult to find those kinds of transactions, or it's just going to take more money to do the deal. And it's going to take more time to pay off your debt. And Marilyn, one of the things I am a big subscriber to is learning how to do debt reduction, because that's how you generate wealth. So the marketplace has made some serious changes out there, which means it's harder to find your deals, and it's going to drive the prices of houses down naturally. It's just how things work in the marketplace. And as you probably know, mortgage rates have gone up from 3% to, gosh, I think they're 7.5% right now for an A+ 30-year mortgage. And that's going to cause houses to come down in value a little bit over time. Right now, things are moving pretty well in our marketplaces, just because people are still moving here from out of state. But it's still just opportunity. Now, you look at things from that avenue, what it does is it opens the door to the creative finance world, because there are huge numbers of people in the marketplace who need help. They are behind in mortgages. And what used to be an equity game, meaning you buy a house at 70 cents on the dollar and you've got about 30% equity built in or so. Today, it may be a cash flow game and learning how to generate equity by buying houses subject to the existing debt, where now you're able to possibly take advantage of a 3 or 4 or 5% 30-year mortgage with limited liability, because you can't go to your bank and get that. But the problem is what I'm seeing in the marketplace is there's limited equity in those. People who bought a house 1, 2, 3 years ago are in trouble. They have to get out. Maybe that was coming through COVID or things of that nature. Maybe they lost their job again. Maybe their job got diminished. Who knows what the situation is? But I'm seeing a lot of situations where you buy houses, and I think this is an important thing to make a note of, Marilyn, as you're taking notes there a little bit, is I'm seeing there are opportunities to buy homes, taking over sellers' existing mortgages, but it takes cash to do it. There may be some arrears on the mortgage, and of course we see a lot of those, and we can talk about that. I see a lot of wholesalers trying to wholesale these deals, so of course they want a wholesale fee. Sellers need some money, and realtors want some money, and so you're having to come out of pocket cash. But if you learn how to play the back end game, which I'm sure we'll talk about, selling that home with a wraparound mortgage where you get a down payment, you're able to use that down payment to offset a large portion of the cash you came out of pocket to buy the house with. And even though you may still be out of pocket, cash, maybe 5%, 8%, something like that along the way, the positive cash flow you can generate by paying a 3 or 4% 30-year mortgage versus receiving 8, 9, maybe a 10% interest rate from the back end buyer, of course, that cash flow allows you to pay off the money you're out of pocket very quickly. And then what you're left with is a very attractive positive cash flow. And in addition, you may be able to create equity in that regard as well. So I'm seeing.
Let me pause right there, because we're going too fast and there is some people that might be a little lost right now. I completely speak your same language, and I can understand some of the things that you're saying right now, but some of the audience probably are a little lost. So, but let's start with the question on what is the first thing that we are here supposed to do. And I believe you said it, and it's about finding the right deal. Is that right?
You have to find the right deal, and you have to find the right seller who is looking for an exit strategy. Okay,
perfect. So finding the right deal. So you talk about being at $80 on the dollars and 77 cents on the dollars here in Houston, and Dallas 80. But now you're saying 68 cents on the dollar is what we're buying right now. And that creates a problem, because the more obviously the more equity, the better deal that we can put together on our finance and capture the interest. So let's talk about this. I mean, my thing has been in the last few years, 10 years, 11 years, is being finding deals. Okay. So they call me the deal queen. I'm just kidding. But I do find deals. My focus is, my company focus on finding motivated sellers. I see a trend that is changing right now, because a lot of the investors who actually had find the deals and they are flipping houses. And I think a lot of my clients right now, or people who's here right now, they're having problems perhaps selling the properties. Okay. So they find the property, they fix it up, and now they have a problem. And this is a good problem, Scott. because this is a good problem to solve. Now, the problem is how I go by selling this property faster, because I don't find a buyer who actually, people doesn't want to pay 7% interest and go through the process of getting pre-qualified for a loan. It's a nonsense, because you gotta wait 45 days, right, to get pre-qualified and close on a property. But then I have investor who's like, I don't finance this property myself. I already have the deal. I fix it up. And now why shouldn't I just go ahead and sell it owner finance? And that's a question that if we can solve that problem from a lot of investors here, what is the step that it needs to be taken from that? If you was in their shoes, let's say you are flipping a home right now, you can't sell it. There is not too many buyers because they don't want to pay that much interest rate, but there's plenty buyers who are willing to pay higher interest rate without having to get the pre-qualified and going through the process of getting great credits and being the perfect buyer. And, you know, like a perfect buyer, in my case, is somebody that has a good credit, they qualify for conventional, or they have a lot of money to put down, but then is 7-8% interest rates, like somebody who is a really good buyer is gonna want to be willing to do? And the answer sometimes is no, they don't want to pay that high interest rate. They prefer waiting, right? So I see a huge opportunity right now for us investors to be able to get into the owner finance world and then start doing our deals ourselves and financing those deals and just doing wraparounds. So and start selling those houses. So what if you was in that situation, you was the one who bought a property, fix it, and now you can't find a conventional buyer or somebody who wants to buy it, what you will do in that case?
So let me kind of backtrack a little bit. So as an investor, you want to buy a house with the intent to buy it, renovate it, and then sell it for cash to a third party through a retail basis. I got that. One of the things we do here in Dallas today is, instead of working, looking at a certain loan to value from a cash flow perspective, I work backwards. And so when I'm looking at a retail deal, like the first thing I'm looking at is making sure that the neighborhood that I am in is a sought after neighborhood from a repair perspective or from a marketing perspective. So I know that there is an exit strategy. But then as I back out my numbers, maybe the house is worth $400,000 on an ARV, after repaired value basis. I back out my real estate commissions, whatever that might be, my title fees, my insurance, my rehab, and I come to my interest carry, and I go, okay, guys, how much profit do we want to make on this one deal? Do you want to make 10,000 net profit, 20,000, 40,000? And you generate that number, and that helps you make an offer on a property today, if that's your intent. But when you do that, you have to have reasonable assurance you can sell your transaction retail. You need to be in the right neighborhood, the right issue. For a lot of us investors, when we go into a neighborhood where the demographic makeup, maybe only 10 or 15% of the people there can actually qualify for a loan. And Marilyn, you have to understand this about our marketplace. About 80 to 85% of the population cannot qualify for an A+ mortgage. It's a big percentage. And with all the things from the Dodd-Frank Act, this and that, and things that they've done along the way, they've just made it problematic. And as you said, a lot of homeowners, if they can qualify for a home, are they willing to go out and pay that 7.5% interest rate or not? And some do and some don't. And I'll tell you, you go back in time, we used to have interest rates back in the 80s at 18% for owner occupied properties. 17, crazy. Hopefully it'll never get there again, but people were still buying houses, believe it or not. Now, here in Texas, when you look at all that, though, not only do you have your principal and interest payment, but we have very high property taxes now because values have gone up so much, and insurance, and it makes for a high payment. And it just is what it is. So when the investor is looking at to do a fix and flip, you need to know your marketplace that you're in first and foremost, because if you don't have an extremely strong area, the way I just described, to back into your numbers, you know, if you can't do that, you may not want to approach it that way. So from there, you know, the investor goes out, they buy a house, hopefully they buy it at a reasonable loan to value. You know, they get it fixed up, they start to market it, and it's not moving. Well, as I said, when you have this large percentage of the marketplace, some 80 to 85% who can't qualify, that's the market we're going after.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, I call it the Walmart theory of houses. You know, what does Walmart do? They market to the masses. They market to that 80 or 85% out there. And so when you're doing that, there is these people who they really do want to buy a home. They don't necessarily want to be a tenant, but they can't buy a house. They already know they can't get a loan. And our goal as an investor is to help steer them to our home and let them understand that, yes, they can buy a home if they have the income. And so as an investor, if you're in this deal, maybe you borrowed hard money or something or private capital that's short term, and it's not moving. So the first thing you've got to be able to do is get out of that short-term capital and get into longer-term capital, which is either through an institutional bank or a mortgage company. And Maryland, I'm looking at the DSCR lenders out there. And those are the guys who look at the income on the property, but those rates are exceedingly high today, in the mid upper 8s, even 9%. And it's like, wow. So everything is up very high that way. But when you go to borrow money from a mortgage company, in today's world, they're going to want to see seasoning. So if you only owned that property for 6 months, maybe even owned it for a year, oftentimes they're still going to want you to put they're going to look at what you're in the deal at, your purchase price plus repairs, and they're going to want you to put 20% down on that or more. And so oftentimes you can refinance out your private capital, your hard money loan, but you're going to have a cash resource to do that with. Now, it can be your own money. Maybe it's going to be a private lender you can work with for that second lien. So once you get to that position where you have been able to refinance out of that short-term loan, that's what opens up the ability to go out and find that owner finance buyer that you were talking about. Because as you said, there's a lot of people out there in the marketplace who want to buy a house. They have a very reasonable down payment. They can afford the monthly payment, but they just can't get a loan for whatever the reason that might be, or they don't want to get a loan. They want to deal owner to owner so often.
Scott, I want to say something really quick because I have a thought. And in my experience, I have done deals like, like I am the girl who actually started doing real estate with no money, right? So how you invest if you don't have no money? It's crazy. And so I did it with looking for deals and starting with wholesaling. But I learned how to do creative stuff, and it's survivor for me, right? How to survive in this industry and make money and do this full time. So what I did is I find my buyer at the same time that I was already refinancing the property. So my buyer was able to bring 20% down. And so because I was able to buy very cheap, sell very high, I got the buyer bringing the finance, and the same title company that did the refinance for me also did the wraparound, and I sold it almost simultaneously to my end buyer that was doing the owner finance and getting owner finance from me. So this is being super creative because I didn't have, remember, I didn't have money. And in some cases, we don't want to come out of pocket too much. I'm just putting that up there so people take notes and see that this is possible to do just without bringing any cash to the closing table. You don't have to even bring, and this is the deals I love to do, right? Everybody would love to do deals like that you don't have to bring no cash to close. But if you are creative and a necessity where, you know, the times that we're being right now are throwing a lot of real estate off and saying, man, I can't really move this property, now what? Now go get your owner finance buyer, right? We have 80 to 85% of people who can really qualify for the mortgage. So pitching to people who actually can qualify for a mortgage is actually impossible. So let's go after the people who cannot qualify for the mortgage. Put them in the house, ASAP, refinance that property, put it on a 20, 30 years loan. And the beautiful thing about this is that you could make a spread. Remember, you bought it for 50, you sold it for 100. Your buyer is gonna bring 20,000. So those are your 20,000 down, 20% down is what is gonna help you sell this property, refinance it, so you're out of pocket, right? Can you agree on that?
Say that one more time for me.
Can you agree on the possibility to do everything all at once when you refinance the same day you sold it to
Well, here's
the
the,
buyer?
so the answer is yes. And the answer is no, because it's going to depend on the property, of course, right? So the question is when you buy a property, the question is going to be is it a house that is move-in ready?
Yes,
Can you-
it's a house that, let's say I purchased this house, I fix it to sell it. Now I can't move it. I mean, I'm trying to see my options because the buyers I have, there is no enough buyers, but I am on a hard money loan. So a month passed by, 2 months passed by, and I'm paying high interest rate. What to do? I will say that in my case, I'll go and find my owner finance buyer as soon as possible, get the proper refinance the same day that I am getting the refinance done. I could be selling the property to my end buyer.
I will tell you that is 100% correct. One, because of the sheer number of potential owner finance buyers in the marketplace. Number two, I think that when you look at down payments, as you said, what I see out there is about 70% of the marketplace has a 10% down payment. I see about 20% of the marketplace has a 20% down payment. And 10% or so have something more than that. So,
can you give me those numbers again really quick? How
so I
much?
see about 70% have 10% down. 20% of the market has 20% down payments, and 10% has something more to put down. And in today's world, what used to be $100,000 house is really more like a $200,000 house, right? And so the buyers, they have 20,000 down. They may have 30. You might find some that have 40, and I get that. It's across the board, and you never know what you're going to get. But when you're in your property, if you understand how to market your home to a buyer for creative finance, for seller financing, you can generate that buyer, have them ready to close, so that on the other hand, while you are moving from your short-term private loan to your permanent loan, it's you close one deal one day, you close the next deal the next day, and you take that buyer's down payment which is what helps you offset the cash you needed out of pocket. Sometimes you get lucky and you need no cash at all. You might need a little bit. Every deal's a little bit different, of course, right? We all would love to live in that perfect world with no cash out of pocket, but that just doesn't always happen.
Yes.
But it can, and it does.
Yes. No, and that's true. That's true. But I'm just trying to be creative because sometimes in some cases, like you have to be super creative. And I have done deals like that where I I was stuck, right? I couldn't sell it. And then I'm like, okay, let me sell. So the easiest buyers to find is actually owner finance buyers. I have a lot of people who always call my properties asking for owner finance. And so that's how I came out with that idea of doing the owner finance to survive, right? Like, oh my gosh, because sometimes you get into a project, obviously in the perfect world, you will sell it on one day, right? But what if that doesn't happen? What if that perfect world doesn't come? And so I generated loans like that and created notes and wrap a lot of mortgage like that, and actually became my favorite thing to do, the owner finance thing, because I was like, if this is now, you know how to do it, it's like a game, like, oh wow, you know, that was easy. And then you start collecting your interest spread every month, which that's amazing, just to being able to have a buyer, you bought the property for 50, you fix it up, let's say you're all in at 70, then you have a buyer, you're paying 7%. I don't know how much is the interest rate right now, but just and when I did my mortgages for this, it was 7% interest rate. Then I sold it at 11% interest rate. So I'm creating this spread on 30 years or 20 years between 7 to 10. That's 3% interest rate every month cash flow. And I'm cashing out and making 20% in some cases. Like you said, not everybody has 20% down, but some of these buyers do, some others don't. So anyway, I'm just saying that this is a really good way to actually start creating these deals, and a lot of companies, and I don't know if you do this, but do you come in and finance some of these homes that, let's say I'm flipping a house and I cannot sell it, right? I have hear from companies that they'll buy the home and finance it to your owner finance buyer. Do you do that or no?
Well, so we started that industry with a company called Casa Bella Tejas years and years ago. And when the interest rates were much lower, that business works very well. The problem is as your acquisition interest rates go up, it's very hard to do that anymore, because you have to have an interest rate spread to make that industry work. And today, when your bank rates are at 9%, you'd have to be selling your property to your buyer at a 12% interest rate. And that's going to get it so high, you're going to price the buyer out of the market. It was a great business model for years when the rates were lower, because the buyer could still have a reasonable monthly payment and interest rate, and financially it worked well. There are some companies in Houston that play that game or try to, but it's very different. And they're actually going to buy your house and you're out of the deal. And they're going to, of course, have to buy it at a discount in order to make the business work. Because the only way to do that is I cannot go out and buy a property at 100 cents on the dollar like I used to and sell it to a buyer. Now you've got to buy that same property between 85 and 90 cents and still sell it at 110. So let me take a minute, Marilyn. I saw some things pop up. One asked, what exactly is a wraparound mortgage? And somebody else asked a basic step-by-step process. So let me kind of start off on a few things. So we can buy homes subject to the existing debt. That means we don't go qualify for the loan. We agree to make the seller's monthly payments. The seller actually sells us the property, gives us a deed, and we give the seller back a deed of trust in order to protect them. So if we don't make our payments, they have the ability to take the house back through a traditional mechanism, which is a foreclosure. Now, when you buy that house from the seller using a subject to type transaction, you may need to come out of pocket cash to pay the seller their equity. Maybe you can give the seller a second lien note and deed of trust for their equity. You may have to make some repairs to the property, so you might need some additional cash. And it could be a combination of all those items. Now, when you buy that property and you own it, and there's that existing mortgage on the home, and you could be doing the same thing if you use private capital or you go through a mortgage company to buy that house or refinance it. And so when you sell it with a wraparound mortgage is a loan, and it's easiest to describe with the flow of money. That is where the buyer would pay the investor a monthly payment, and the investor pays their mortgage company, their lender, their monthly payment. So the back-end home buyer's mortgage wraps around the investor's first lien mortgage. And so it literally just wraps around it in a way. And that wraparound mortgage can be identical to the existing loan on the property. We call that a mirror wrap. It is usually, though, for a larger monthly loan amount and for a larger interest rate. So for instance, I might have a 7% interest rate with my lender. And as Marilyn said, I might sell my house to my buyer at a 10% interest rate. And so there's going to be a spread between what the buyer owes me and what I owe my mortgage company. And there's going to be additional positive cash flow between what the buyer is paying me and what I owe my mortgage company. And so you generate an equity spread and you generate cash flow. So that's a basic description of a wraparound mortgage. I'm trying to read this question. What's the difference between a deal with an owner finance seller and an owner finance buyer? Well, that's kind of obvious. I just described that a little bit. That's where an owner finance seller, if we're going to buy a home from a seller financing, I just gave one of the options there and how you do that. From a sale perspective to the buyer, of course, we're going to do the wraparound in those situations in most cases. But it takes a little bit of time to go through a step-by-step process, because there's one step-by-step process for a seller if we're going to buy that home from the seller financing, and there's a different step-by-step process if you're going to sell it to a buyer. So Marilyn, with your permission, I'll kind of briefly walk through that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to buy a home from a seller with owner financing, and guys, there's 3 ways to do that. If the seller has no debt on the property, they can be your bank, and you can negotiate any deal you want to negotiate with your seller, and they become your lender. Number 2 is if your seller does have a mortgage on the property, as I said earlier, maybe you can buy that loan subject to the existing debt, meaning that's where we're agreeing to make their payments. And maybe you simply take over that payment. Maybe you have to bring the loan current because they're behind in payments. Maybe the seller wants a down payment. There might be a realtor fee. Maybe that property needs some renovations done to it. Maybe there's a lot of equity and you want to give the seller a second lien mortgage, for their equity. And it can be any combination of that, which is kind of what makes this business fun from a negotiation perspective. Or we can buy the home from the seller with a wraparound mortgage. Maybe the seller doesn't want to do a subject to transaction. And so we do a wrap mortgage between the investor and the seller. And that wrap mortgage might be there in order to put a shorter term on the loan. Maybe they want a balloon payment, say, pay me off in 5 years, pay me off in 10 years. It can be whatever you get the chance to negotiate with the seller that works for you and the seller. And so Step by step is we go to contract with the seller. There are some suggested disclosures that we provide here in our law firm that we think are necessary to have between the seller and the investor buyer to ensure that the seller is fully informed. 90% of the creative finance business is about disclosure. Next, we have to understand some of the rules and regulations out there because the seller is mandated by the Texas Property Code and Texas Finance Code to provide us what we call the Texas Underlying Lien Disclosure Notice. We provide that for you in our packaging. And there is a mandated insurance disclosure notice. And those today have to be in both Spanish and English. And we as investors should make certain that our seller understands that because sellers won't know that unless they talk to
you I'm sorry, you said insurance notice and what else? The first one?
It's the Texas Underlying Lien Disclosure Notice.
Oh, that one is important, very important.
Well, and of course,
Because-
now it has to be in Spanish and English.
Oh, wow.
And the Texas Finance disclosure that came out also in January of 2022 has to be in Spanish and English. In addition, so let me just make this comment real quick. In addition to those items being mandated, this transaction must close in a law firm or a title company, or the transaction is void. Not voidable, void. So it's very important to understand those kind of items. Now, step by step is we go to contract with the seller, and I like to suggest the utilization of a TREC or a Texas Real Estate Commission contract form. From there, what we do is we take that contract and we supplant it with our disclosure package that both the buyer and seller sign. And that's there to really disclose everything in detail because there's two main things that the audience has to understand. The seller is going to be liable on that existing mortgage they have until it's paid off. And we don't ever want to tell them we're going to pay it off sooner than later because we don't know what's going to happen. And secondly, that mortgage that seller has what is called a due on sale clause in it. That means when we as the investor buy it from the seller, the mortgage company has the option, but not the obligation to ask the seller to pay off their loan. And we all know the seller doesn't have the ability to do that. So if that was to happen, that obligation might fall upon me as the investor to pay it off. Or we have to learn how to navigate that differently. And we do that here in our law firm if and when that happens. Now, guys, let me just tell you, in some 10,000 closings I've done like this, I've seen that happen 8 or 10 times total. So it doesn't happen often. But the main thing is it's realizing that it can happen. So that's why we have these disclosures built into the into our contract. And then once we do all that, we take it to our closing agent. Oftentimes, this is a law firm such as our firm, Horn & Associates PC, and we close transactions all over Texas and nationally of this nature. We put your disclosure package with it. We order the title evidence that you're seeking, whether it's an abstract of title or a title policy. And we're able to close those deals typically in 10 to 14 business days. And I like that 10 to 14 day time frame because you want to give your seller the opportunity to review the contract, review the disclosures, seek counsel of some type if they wish to do so, and then close the deal. That's how we protect ourselves because sellers have very short-term memories. So once we have bought this home through these mechanisms, and guys, I'm shortcutting a lot of things because there's some things in between you need to make sure you get done. You then want to go and you market this house to a back-end buyer. Now, I don't need to go through the acquisition side of the property if you're going to use a hard money lender or a private lender. That's a traditional acquisition. that you're going to close in a title company. Your lender is going to provide a note and deed of trust on the property. And we close that deal through a traditional closing process, almost always in a title company. Now, when we turn to go to sell the home with a wraparound mortgage, you have to, of course, market to find the buyer. And as Marilyn said earlier, these buyers are everywhere because we're dealing with 80% plus of the population out there. And it's simply about structuring your deal properly. You know, if you are in this deal, you can be in this transaction at 70 cents on the dollar or 80 cents on the dollar. Maybe if you bought the home subject to the existing debt, you might be into it at 90 or 95 cents. You're going, oh my gosh, how can I sell this home? Well, normally in the owner finance world, we're able to sell our homes for a slight markup over the appraised value, because what we're doing is we're selling a home, we're selling really an opportunity to someone who can't qualify for a loan, but who wants to buy a home. We're selling a reasonable down payment for that property in its particular condition and neighborhood. And we're selling a reasonable monthly payment that the buyer can afford. We're not, if you can qualify for a mortgage loan and you have a down payment, you can go buy any house you want in your price range and you can be picky and choosy. But if you can't qualify for a mortgage, that picky and choosy part goes out the window. And now you have to go buy the home that's available where a seller is offering it with seller financing. And again, there might be 10 people lined up to buy your house because there's that many people out there who want to own a home and just can't qualify for a mortgage today. So once you find that buyer and you have your loan structured, so let's use the example that you bought this home from a creative finance perspective, meaning that you bought it subject to the existing debt. And let's say that existing debt is 90% of the current value of the property. And let's say you need to come out of pocket 10% cash to close the deal. Maybe it's realtor fees, down payment, bring the loan current, whatever it might be. Okay. Well, we take that same house and let's say that you're in the deal at $200,000. You have a $180,000 first lien mortgage. You're $20,000 out of pocket for the various fees we just talked about. So how do you market it? Well, we were typically going to market that house, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, Marilyn, for about $220,000 normally. And we're going to ask for a $20,000, maybe a $40,000 down payment. So when we take this $20,000 down payment, maybe my interest rate on my loan that I bought subject to is at 4%. And maybe I'm going to sell my house at 220. I'm going to get 20,000 down. I'm going to carry back a $200,000 loan at 10%. So my profit spread, real quick calculation, is a 6% profit on 200,000 or $12,000 a year. That's going to give me $1,000 a month positive cash flow. Actually, it's a little bit more than that because I'm also making a 10% interest rate on the difference between $180,000 and $200,000 loan. So I might be making an $1,100 to $1,200 a month positive cash flow on that deal. And the $20,000 down payment that I got reimbursed me the money that I'm out of pocket. Now, we all would love that deal to work perfect just like that. But typically there's going to be a little bit of money out of your pocket to do that deal that you need to come up with. It might be $5,000, $8,000. You might borrow that from a private lender of some type, or it could be your own cash. But if you're borrowing, let's say $8,000 from a private lender at 8 or 10% interest rate, and you've got this $1,000 a month positive cash flow, guys, it doesn't take you too long to pay off that $8,000. it'll be paid off in 8 or 9 months and it's gone. And now you're making $1,000 to $1,200 a month positive cash flow. And yes, things really do work just like that in the market. It is understanding our industry and how to find those deals, how to market them, and how to sell them. Now, let's use another example that Marilyn came up with, is where you buy this house with hard money. And most hard money lenders, guys, are going to want a 70% loan to value. So if you bought that house at 80%, you're 10% out of pocket. And so again, maybe you're 20,000 out of pocket again, buying that same house. You need to go and refinance it at a mortgage company to get long-term financing on it. So there's going to be some cost and fees for that, but you buy it, you renovate it. But now, instead of being out of pocket 20%, or 20,000, maybe you're out of pocket $30,000, maybe $35,000, because you have interest carry you've been paying and those kind of items along the way. So a basic premise is it does take some cash to play the game sometime, not always, but sometimes, and or it takes access to capital. And guys, there's plenty of private lenders out there who'd love to work with you that can have a second lien position on a property like this that would allow you to pay them a fair interest rate. Now, as you're refinancing your home and having to come up with a little bit more of a down payment, maybe, you're selling the home simultaneously where you're getting this big down payment, and you use that down payment to help reimburse you your out-of-pocket dollars. Now, I don't want to oversimplify all that process, because there's a learning curve to buying our homes, to financing the homes. And there's an understanding there may be some cash scenarios that you have to be out of pocket. Every deal we get involved with is different. As Marilyn said, sometimes we get very lucky and find those deals that we can get into with limited money out of pocket, refinance it, that's going to require down payment, but also have a buyer lined up at the same time. That truly does happen, where you might have a zero sum out of pocket and just generate cash flow. But at the same token, there are situations where you do need some cash to close to make the deals work. And I think you're going to find there's going to be more of those than of the no cash out of pocket, but they both blend together. And the key is hunting those deals down, learning how to negotiate them properly. And then, of course, as Marilyn said, finding the proper buyers and marrying the two together. So I want to make a note about selling a property to a back-end home buyer using seller financing, because buying a home as an investor is a non-owner occupied or a business transaction. There's very little compliance issues involving that. I mentioned the underlying lien disclosure notice that's in our Texas property code and the insurance disclosure notice. And I mentioned you must close those in a title company or in a law office. And guys, I'm gonna make a real quick note there. Even though I'm a title attorney, title companies do not understand this business. They don't like these deals because they don't know what's going on and they don't know how to draft the paperwork, period. That's why you come to a law firm like ours at Horn & Associates, and we are able, because we are a title company as well, to obtain that title insurance for you. And it certainly eliminates those issues. When we're selling a home to a buyer with owner financing, now we have to understand compliance, because this is a very, very important thing to learn. Number one, we have to comply with what is called the SAFE Act. Marilyn, you have to date the SAFE Act a little bit? So the SAFE Act here in Texas says you must incorporate a knowledgeable attorney into the transaction. It says you must provide the buyer the RESPA disclosures. RESPA is the is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act under HUD. And there are 36 disclosures. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Guys, I don't do that. What we do is we take our home buyer to a loan processor. We call those loan processors today an RMLO. It stands for Residential Mortgage Loan Originator. And what they do is they gather financial information from the buyer, put together this really nice package, provide the buyer all of these various disclosures, and they take the burden off of you. So you don't have to worry about those items. They take care of that for you automatically. The buyer pays for that loan processing. And guys, what's really fun is this is the exact same loan processing that any home buyer goes through the day. It doesn't mean just seller financing. It's anybody. I'm trying to write down all these questions, Marilyn, also that I'm seeing pop up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So the RMLO processes a buyer, and they help us stay compliant with the SAFE Act. So that's kind of nice. They also, by doing that, keep us compliant with RESPA. But then we got to think about this thing called the Dodd-Frank Act. Came into being back in 2012. And what Dodd-Frank says for us investors selling a home to a home buyer is that we must consider and verify, those are the buzzwords, a borrower's financial information to ensure that they have the ability to repay the loan. We call that the ATR rule, ability to repay. Very important. The reason that is there is they don't want unscrupulous investors to sell a house to a buyer, capture a big down payment, and then foreclose on the buyer because they can't afford the monthly payment. And guys, there was a fella out of El Paso doing just that 4 or 5 years ago. And because of him, one guy, they changed our laws in January of 2022. And this is where they created what's called the new wraparound lending bill. That bill says today, that's the bill that says you must close in a title office or a law firm or the transaction is void. That's pretty serious. It says you must provide the Texas underlying lien disclosure notice, and they created this new insurance disclosure notice in both Spanish and English. It also says if you do 3 or more transactions in a 12-month period, you must be a licensed RMLO yourself, not just use one, and your company has to be licensed with the Texas Savings and Loan Administration. Okay, we'll talk about that too, that title. So what we did when that law came out, guys, is we created this company called OFN. It stands for the Owner Finance Network Lending LLC. And what OFN Lending does is we created a mechanism with permission from the Texas Savings and Loan Administration to insert ourselves into the transaction between the investor and the home buyer to take the obligations I just laid on you off of you. We take the risk. And so we found a way to fix the scenario out there so you don't have to be licensed. Now, if you're doing a lot of transactions, which we all want to do, I think it's a very wise thing to consider those kind of items. Now, I just laid out a lot of stuff for you guys that you have to think about and understand along the way. And you're going, oh my gosh, how do I do it? Oftentimes you don't have to. Marilyn goes out and works with you guys, helping you through these kind of transactions. And here at the Owner Finance Network, we do the same thing. So if you have this deal you're trying to sell, we are a one-stop shop that provides the lending, not lending, but the legal to help you structure that deal and put it together. The title insurance, if you wish to get title insurance for your buyer. If you need help to structure the transaction, we have what's called a note pro service to do that. We turn around and we help. We have the loan processing all in-house. We have the loan servicing all in-house. It's called OFN loan processing, OFN loan servicing, and of course this new bill called OFN lending. So it's a one-stop shop to hopefully idiot-proof this from all of those scenarios out there for the investors. And this is how you start to learn. So you have to go out and gather this information, guys. You don't need to be an expert in the SAFE Act. You don't need to be an expert in Dodd-Frank. You need to know some basics. And I'm just going to make one more comment about Dodd-Frank. The other thing Dodd-Frank does is it creates 3 levels of financing. The first one is called QM, which is a qualified mortgage. And rarely do we stay down there because the interest rates are too low. We live in what's called the high cost level, which means that when we are selling our home to a consumer, that is an owner occupant, our interest rate can be 8.5%, or excuse me, our APR, which stands for the annual percentage rate, can be 8.5% over the APOR. And the APOR stands for the average prime offer rate. That is an index the government publishes every Tuesday. So you can Google APOR and it will provide you those. I just see Laleen said she called our offices. I don't know what happened there, but Laleen, if you need somebody, you can always give me a call. My cell number is 214-649-6080. I'll put some information up here in a moment. But you have to understand these basics of Dodd-Frank.
So let me ask you something about that. So you're saying APR is 8.5% over the regular APR, or what that means? APOR.
Yeah,
so
this is your wonderful government giving you all these acronyms that just confuse the heck out of everybody.
Yes, it's confusing.
They really do. It is.
So that means that I can offer to my end buyer anywhere above 8.5% interest.
Well, the APOR is about 5.5% right now. Okay, the APOR, average prime offer rate. So if we're doing a wraparound mortgage, the wraparound mortgage is called a subordinate loan. And so the APR, which is the average percentage rate, and guys, you can go online, you can Google APR calculator, you can enter the information in there, which is pretty easy to do, and it will spit out what your APR is. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know how to do that. And so to be compliant with Dodd-Frank, the APR can be 8.5% over the APOR. That's where the confusing part comes in, because they sound almost the same. So right now you could be up to 13% or so on an APR, an average percentage rate, and still be compliant with Dodd-Frank. Years ago, the APOR was down to almost 0, which means that you had to watch your interest rates very closely, because if you're at 8.5%, 9%, 9.5%, you could be pushing, the envelope there. Now, can you go over that? You can, and anything over that scenario I just described becomes what is called a high-priced loan. And if you fall into the high-priced loan category and you're going to sell the home that way, you must send your buyer to take an online HUD course. It's about a 3-hour course that helps to educate them about buying a home and things of that nature. After they take that course, they provide them a certificate, and you need to keep that certificate in your file in order to be compliant with Dodd-Frank. Guys, I have never in my career ever had to do that to this point in time. I don't anticipate ever doing that, but sometimes it's out there. So it's just having a knowledge base. And again, you don't have to dig into Dodd-Frank, which is this ridiculous bill to read or try to read, which I've actually never done, but we've studied it pretty hard. But you need to have enough information and know the basics, as we said. So when we as investors are working with the consumer, things you must be considering are RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. So how do we deal with that? We utilize an RMLO to process our buyer. Solves that problem. That also helps us to be more compliant with the SAFE Act. Great, we're done. We call it idiot-proof the deal, guys. We all move too fast. We need to be smart. Dodd-Frank, consider and verify the financial information provided by your borrower to you. How do you do that? You use the RMLO to process the buyer. They give you the package, and you're able to look at the first 2 pages to ensure that they have a reasonable debt to income ratio. We're not under a specific requirement for a particular debt to income ratio. By the way, guys, if you go get a mortgage from a big bank, they are limited to a 43% debt to income ratio for the borrower. That's max. We don't have that requirement. We have a reasonableness requirement. But reasonable doesn't mean 70% debt to income ratio, because they can't afford the house if they're at that price. And when I say debt to income, guys, what I mean is their monthly combined income. It's the price of the house plus any recurring bills the buyer might have, such as credit cards or a car payment, divided by their monthly income. And that ratio you want to have reasonable. Banks are 43%. Should we be at that same level? It's a very good guidepost to consider to stay there. Can we go to 45 or 47%? Certainly we can. And from there, it's a moving scale to be reasonable. The last thing we want to do is sell a home to somebody who can't afford it. So we don't want to ever push those envelopes out there. So as you get involved into the creative finance world, learning how to structure the acquisition is important to do. And you don't have to be an expert. It's knowing where to go to get this information. Learning how to repair that properly, correctly, so you can get it done. How am I going to finance the house? Am I going to buy it using private capital, a hard money lender, or am I going to buy it using owner financing of some type? Then once you've bought the house, you've got it ready to market. How am I going to market it, sell it? How do I do that? And then where do I go to help put that deal together? The contract, the disclosures, the RMLO, all these issues rolled into one. So that's why we created the Owner Finance Network, was for that exact same reason. And so to put things up on the screen here for you guys, our company is theownerfinancenetwork.com. You can go there and actually get all of our information. Our law firm here is Horn, H-O-R-N-E, and Associates PC. The website is hornrealestatelaw.com. And our title company is First option title. And we are a new direct operation. And we provide title insurance all over Texas as well as nationally. So we provide all those kind of things. So guys, don't let what we're talking about be daunting to you by any means. There is a learning curve in everything that we do. And you need to go out and gather information from the right people. Maryland, maybe one of our entities as well. And you start to learn the business and you get out there and you start doing deals. And I look at Maryland, who came here and just started doing deals, and you started learning how to do the deals, right?
Yes.
It was just awesome when you hear those things.
Yes, and you know, this is a little bit easier than whatever it sound when you go to the right people. Like right now, like I say, I'm super blessed to come across you because I feel like the difference, somebody was asking, what's the difference between a rental property and when you own or finance a property? There is a huge difference on that, in my personal opinion, and is that you as an owner, when you rent a property, obviously you get the tax benefits, right? When you have a rental property, but at the same time, I think doing deals is just like you have to be able to do different kind of deals. It's not only one kind, but different. You have to be able to do, you know, and have different type of deals in your portfolio. And so when you rent a property, yes, you do need rentals so you can have some benefits in terms of the tax and the depreciation. But also when you do owner finance, the benefit about owner finance is actually unlimited because you can also do some depreciation on the taxes in there. But also you are putting this in autopilot. And I don't know how many of you love that, but I love have things, just these owner finance deals that I have created, they pay me every month. And I have an escrow company. After I have closed these deals, I put an escrow company where they pay my lender, they pay me the spread, and they are paying taxes, insurance, and everything on the home. So it doesn't really get as sweeter as that. And you don't have to fix the toilets or the AC for some reason. And I don't know your experience, but in my experience, I don't know how many people here have a lot of rental properties, but I got to own up to 30 properties at some point. You know, I sold some of them, but I'm just saying at some point it's so annoying when it's Christmas or is Thanksgiving, and it always happens on Christmas that the AC run off, and then you have to call or in Thanksgiving, as you're like, come on, this always happens when I'm trying to have, you know, time with my family and chill. When you have a rental property and then you have to call your AC guy and hey, can you run this? And then the guy is busy and you're like, man, and then you're calling other people. So doing owner finance deals gives you the peace and, you know, the equity is the spread on the interest every year, right? Every month without doing anything. You don't have to do absolutely nothing but getting, like Scott was saying, 500 passive or 1,000 or even more on some deals, right? Without having to go through the hustle and the stress of getting that property fixed and maybe not having the cash to come in and fix an AC and spend $10,000 just like this, right? Because the AC went off and then you have to replace the whole system. So it does have their benefits, right, Scott? Can you tell us a little bit about, in your personal opinion, what's the difference between a rental property and a owner finance deal?
Besides a whole lot of work between the two. No, and
Right?
by the way, you're exactly right. So I've owned hundreds of rental properties at any one time. I do not like the rental game in that instance. A lot of people push rentals because they say you get depreciation and you get appreciation. I get it. And there's nothing wrong with owning rental properties. I do think it's more work. Owning one rental property is a lot harder than owning 30. Because once you get to a certain economy of scale, you might be able to hire somebody to help you manage those rental properties. If you only have
Right.
one rental property, either you're going to be the manager, the maintenance man, everything yourself, or you're going to hire a property management company to do that for you and pay them an 8 or 10% fee every month. Now, one thing I think it's a big difference here between rental properties and seller finance properties. If you're going to use cash to buy a house with, and by cash, I mean your own cash, private capital, institutional bank, mortgage company, whatever it might be, with the same amount of money, you can buy 3 owner finance properties versus 2 rental properties. Why? Because if you go to a bank to buy a property, you're putting down 20 to 25% automatically. So if you only have X amount of dollars in cash to spend, maybe you can buy 2 rental properties and you're out of cash. But with owner financing, because when we sell the home to our buyer with a down payment, we get a down payment. So that down payment helps us to recoup that cash that allows us to buy a 3rd house. So I kind of like that a little bit. Next, on a owner finance property, I get a chance to sell my home typically for 110% of its market value. And I get 110% or a little bit more of rental value. So I'm making money both ways more. Now, as you said earlier, the average tenant in Texas is in their home for about 18 to 24 months. When they move out, you have vacancy, meaning you have negative cash flow. You get to go in and clean up the house. You get to mow the yard, do this, do that. With an owner finance transaction, there is no vacancy. With a rental property, you may pay a property manager. With a owner finance property, we utilize a loan servicer, such as OFN loan servicing, which is also Home Key loan servicing. With a rental property, if the AC goes out, as you said, if the commode is leaking, if this problem happens, you got to put a new roof on, that problem happens, we as the landlord have to go pay all that money and take care of issues. However, if you have a seller finance property, that falls onto the home buyer. And one thing I really believe in, Marilyn, is this. If you were to look at a comparison between a rental property and a seller finance property over the course of a time span, 15 years, let's say, 30 years, whatever it might be. At the end of 30 years, you've paid off your mortgage, but you own the property debt-free, and maybe it's gone up in value a little bit. Now, if you ever sell that property and you depreciated it, you have to recapture that depreciation. There's nothing free, it's just deferred. With owner financing over here at 30 years, you no longer own the property, your buyer has paid you off. But what I believe is with the additional positive cash flow, no extra expenses, the extra money we're getting in over here over the life of the loan, I believe the 2 deals equal out. So if all things are equal, apples to apples, the question becomes, what is the path of least resistance? And you've already said it. It's the seller financing where you're collecting a payment every month because it's their home. They make their payments. They own the house. There's a pride of ownership. They take care of it. They fix it up. They improve it. Unlike the tenant who doesn't. Think about renting a car. You go to another city and rent a car. Do you drive that same car like you drive your own car? Heck, no, you don't. You might, but Not always. It's the same thing with a tenant and a seller finance buyer. There's a pride of ownership. You take care of things better. And so, can bad things happen to good people? Yes. Sometimes your home buyer gets in trouble and they have to get out of their deal. Whatever, maybe they got divorced, they have some medical issue, they got transferred, whatever it might be. Bad things happen to good people. But what's nice is because we're dealing owner to owner with that buyer, we don't have to necessarily foreclose on them. We suggest open communication. Let's find a better way to work with them. You know, can we do what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure? Absolutely, we can. Can I do a cash for keys and do a deed in lieu? Yeah. All sorts of ways of doing that. I have just recently bought 2 houses back from my residents who were in some financial straits, some personal problems were going on. They needed to get out. I was able to take the house back over, paid them some cash, and bought the house back. I've now resold it for a marked up value and gone on. But there wasn't a foreclosure involved. That is so great about our industry is that we don't have to do what the big banks do, you know. Their position is no pay, no stay, and we're going to foreclose. Forget this loan modification BS that's out in the marketplace. That's great, but you still owe the money. It doesn't go away. And all you're doing is kicking the can down the road anyway, in most cases. So I love our owner finance business over the rental business for all of those reasons involved. And I'll just tell you, as one of the largest single family investors in the state of Texas, a guy that's done some 7,700 properties today in loans, this is all we do. Yes, I still buy houses with cash, but I love buying houses using my creative finance. All I do is sell my homes using seller financing. I try to avoid the retail world. We do a few retail sales for the right property based on what we had, but we do very few of those. For every 100 owner finance deals we do, we might do 1 retail sale. That's just who I am. And one thing I want to really bring up to the audience is this. I get a chance to do a lot of seminars around Texas. We do a lot of one-day seminars that teach owner financing, and it's start to finish, how to buy, sell, and everything in between. I believe that learning how to play the owner finance game is the #1 best way for wealth generation in our industry. You mentioned, Marilyn, you started business as a wholesaler. Understand that. It's a low entry cost. It's a way to get in. Got it. And you can make some quick dollars. It is a one and done strategy, right? You're right back on the hamster wheel the next day. If you want to do a fix and flip, okay, same thing. It takes a little bit more work. You're going to need a little bit of cash flow in order to pay your debt. Have to have a little bit more knowledge, the repairs, know what you're doing. Have to be able to sell that house. And sometimes you can make a little bit more money. And guys, going back in time, different marketplaces yield different things. We've come out of a very unique marketplace where houses went up in value very quick for lots of reasons. Big wholesale money's made. We're getting back to what we call normality, meaning you make anywhere from 2 to 5% wholesale fees typically. But if you take apples to apples to apples, the same numbers that you buy a house for, that it's worth. Let's say you buy a house and you're all in it at 80 cents on the dollar. Let's just use that number. Let's say the house is worth 100 cents on the dollar. Well, if you wholesale that property, so let me give you a number. So you have to, so if you bought that house for $60,000 and the repairs are $15,000, so you're into it at 75%. Excuse me. You have to be there to make, in order to make a 5% profit, you have to sell it for 80 cents on the dollar. The only way to make more money on a wholesale deal like that is to A, sell it for more than 80 cents, hard to do. You have to buy it for less than 60 cents on the dollar, or you've got to tell somebody that the rehab really isn't 15,000. So you have to fib a little bit, and that's what a lot of wholesalers do. They tell you a house is not worth 100. They tell you the house is really worth 110 when it's not. They tell you that the rehab is only 10,000 when it's really 15,000. That's just the game that is played so often out there. But using that scenario, your profit is 5%. Got it. So let's look at the exact same scenario for a moment on a fix and flip deal. Same numbers. You buy for 80. Now, you buy this property, guys, as an investor, we're paying the title costs, and you have to go pay lender fees to borrow money. So you're going to borrow, that's going to cost you about 3%. Next, as you go through the rehab of that property and you market it to sell it retail, that's going to take you about 6 months to buy it, renovate it, sell it, cash it out. That's on average. So that's about 6% carry costs. You're now in this deal at 9%. So now you're limited to sell that house for $100,000 because that's what it appraises for. Well, you're going to pay at least a 3% realtor fee. You might pay a 4% realtor fee. And as a seller, we're going to pay the title policy. That's another 1%. So if you pay a 4% commission and 1% title, that's 5%. Well, on our acquisition and hold costs, we're into it for 9%. We're now at 14%. And now you got utilities and yard care, which is about 1%. So again, your maximum profit is a 5% fee on a fix and flip deal using those numbers. The only way to make more money in a fix and flip is to sell it for more. Good luck. You're going to be bound upon the appraisal, and prices are coming down right now. 2, just like the wholesale deal, you've got to buy it for less money. Or 3, you've got to fix it up for less money. And guys, in today's marketplace, everything has gone up. Materials, labor, etc. So wholesale, 5% profit, fix and flip, 5% profit. All of that is if you're lucky. Let's talk about owner financing for a minute. In Maryland, I'm not here to get off in the weeds on selling a note too much, but one of the things I try to teach investors is you play the owner finance game. Using the exact same numbers we just talked about, we sell this house for 110 and we get 10% down. So now we have a $100,000 loan at a 10% interest rate. I take my 10% and I pay it towards my 80% loan and my 3% closing costs. And I'm going to have some holding costs, but my holding costs will be less than retail because I can sell my house owner finance so much faster because I'm dealing with 80% of the people out there. So I take all of my income from my buyer and I apply it to my debt. So guys, I'm not making any money for maybe 12 to 24 months. This is an investment strategy. It is not a job strategy. I see the insurance question and I'll answer that here in a moment. If you learn how to sell a mortgage, what I will show you is in 24 months, you can make 4 to 5 times more profit on the exact same deal by learning how to play that game. That's how I learned to play this game. Going back to the 1990s, we became the largest provider of owner finance paper into what we call the secondary marketplace. I didn't know at the time what we were doing. It was just a way to make money, and it worked. And today it works again too. And that's why I love to push owner financing. You can hold your property and generate cash flow based upon how your financing is set up. Did I buy it subject to, like we talked about earlier, where I can make this big positive cash flow? Maybe. If your financing is with a small commercial bank, they might be on a 15-year mortgage and you're on a 30 if you're a buyer, you're still going to have positive cash flow. Awesome. Or maybe you want to play the note game. All of this adds into play. But as Marilyn has said, this is an awesome strategy. We've shown you why we believe owner finance properties is a better mechanism than rental properties, and why. It truly is. It's a path of least resistance. And then I can show you how you can make 5 times more money almost on the same deal versus a wholesale or a fix and flip deal. And when you can learn how to make 5 times more money, I don't know where you can invest your profit on a fix and flip and make 5x in 2 years. You can't do it unless you just get damn lucky somewhere. But literally, this is learning the art of financing. And that is what owner financing is. I often tell people that they say I'm a real estate investor, and yes, I am, but I'm really a financing company, and my vehicle is real estate. And I think that by learning this game, this is how you learn to start generating income and becoming profitable. And there's many, many ways of doing it in between. And you've got to take the time to learn to become, proficient at all the various mechanisms. And so it takes a little bit of time, but once you start learning all the basics, you can get there and make it happen. Marilyn, you're muted, my dear.
Yes,
There you go.
yes. That actually is very black and white for me. I don't know that, owner finance is totally the way to go, especially in today's market. I have been helping investors, but people is reaching out to me because they know I have a big buyers list. I have about 30,000 in my buyers list, but also I do a lot of marketing. Like that typical realtor will go and put a house in the market and put owner finance option in there and see if any other realtor will bring a buyer with looking for finance. But the way I do it is I blast this property, I put it in Craigslist, I put on Facebook, I go crazy with the marketing, and then I get my phone like crazy. It could be as easy as just putting like a sign in the yard and have your phone owner finance, no credit check, and boom, your phone is ringing. So anyway, guys, this is being a blast. It's amazing. Scott, if you can put your phone number here, I think some people wanted it, or some way to contact you, because I feel like why going to any other title company to do your deals, right? If Scott has one, he's an attorney. He's actually very knowledgeable. He can actually structure this where once get pre-qualify your buyer, because he has a company also who does the pre-qualification process of the buyer. And also at the end, I mean, he is the guy to go to. I mean, I will definitely start using your services, Scott. It doesn't make sense to even go anywhere else when you have so much experience on
the
all
most
of it.
important thing, though, is for people like yourself who are well versed in the industry, and even for the newer investor who is getting involved, is you need to learn the compliance side of this. You don't want to just start doing it willy-nilly and winding up stumping your toe somewhere. Understanding and learning the things we talked about, the Texas property code items, from the underlying lien disclosure notice, the insurance disclosure notice, and the finance code. What is it I need to know about when I'm buying a house with owner financing? But when you go to the back end sale to the home buyer, it's understanding those compliance items are what are so important. And I'll say that if everybody wants to take a moment and go to the ownerfinancenetwork.com, number one, you're going to find all of our contact info there for OFN, for Horn and Associates, as well as for our title company. It's all there. But there are buku, as I say, free videos on there that people can listen to. There's Ask the Attorney videos that we do, where we get everything from start to finish in the owner finance world, buying, selling, and everything in between. All the new rules and regulations, there's step-by-step processes that we try to put out there to make this as easy as possible. But it's a great place for people to start generating a knowledge base of the industry. They can check us out on our YouTube channel. Unfortunately, then they do all of these little short snippet videos every week that on various little topics, whether it's legal, title, owner financing, whatever it might be, to help provide legitimate education for our marketplace. You know, so often, Marilyn, I see people out there where they've closed 2 or 3 deals. They become the overnight expert, and they're going to start teaching and training people how to do things, right? They don't have a clue. This is a learned business that you generate experience over time. And we just happen to be very, very fortunate to be a one-stop shop for our industry. And with the volume of deals that we've done over the years, it is awesomely a chance to give back to our community, to help our investors learn how to do things like this, share with them how we got from point A to point Z over time, but to also provide the resources that they want to see, they want to find. I want to share just a couple quick little things out there for everybody. So the website is theownerfinancenetwork.com. And the question came up earlier about insurance. And in the owner finance world, insurance is a very important thing, because the way a mortgage company knows that a property has been sold is through the change of insurance typically. And so learning how to navigate insurance is so important. So let's assume that we've bought a home. Let's assume we bought that house subject to the existing debt. And of course, we want to get a copy of the current insurance on the property. Now, at that point, we might add ourselves on that policy as a party of interest. Great, easy. We renovate the home and we go to sell it with a wrap and around mortgage. At that point, I want my home buyer to go out and get a brand new insurance policy of their choosing. Maybe I help them with the insurance, maybe not, whatever they need. It's a 1-year prepaid policy. And in that scenario, the home buyer and my original seller become co-insureds on that policy. Why? Because when the insurance company sends it to the mortgage company, if the mortgage company doesn't see their borrower, that is the original seller, on there as an insured, they will not accept the insurance policy. So next, what you have to know is the mortgage company, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whomever, they will be the primary loss payee. And we as the investor, ABC LLC, becomes the secondary loss payee. And again, we've got many videos like that on their Refinance Network for everybody that walks them through insurance, all the issues, why you've got to be able to do things as well. But that's an important thing to learn in the owner finance industry as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for helping us. I think at this point, everybody kind of have, and it's hard to wrap your head around these terms sometimes, right? But you know, just to recap very short, it will be find the deal That's important. It could be a wholesale deal or subject to deal, wrap them or refinance if you're doing a wholesale deal, right? That you're buying and you're fixing to flip, and refinance the deal, sell it to a buyer, owner finance buyer, which those, as Scott said, there is 80 to 85% of the buyers do not qualify for finance. So the pool of buyers, if you find and you do owner finance, are gonna be huge, because now you have a lot more people to sell your houses to. And so that's a really good thing to know, that there is a lot more market for our houses if we do owner finance our house. Become the bank is the best because you're creating a spread on the interest rate, right? So you sell to your owner finance buyer. You could do it right after you refinance. You could do it the same day that you refinance. In some cases, we're gonna do zero, like, try to do it where 100% finance. In some cases, you're not gonna be able to do that. You're gonna have to bring some money to refinance your property, but then you have a buyer who's gonna buy it from you with a down payment, right? So you can recoup some of that money that you invested when you refinance the property. And all the documentation and everything can be created with a title company. Scott has a title company that he actually is has a website, once stop title.com, right? Is it one
Yeah, so
stop
it's first, the initial
first
one ST, option title,
.com?
and I believe it's firstoptiontitle.com is our website.
Okay.
But they can also find us there through the ownerfinancenetwork.com or through Horn and Associates, or excuse me, hornrealestatelaw.com as well.
And the most important part here is being in compliance with the law, being in compliance with Dodd-Frank, and being pre-qualifying your buyer to make sure that is an okay buyer to do this mortgage or give this mortgage to. And like I say, Scott has a title company, but he also has a company who will pre-qualify the buyer, right, Scott? You do that too? You have it
So
all together.
a point for everybody. When we are in the investment game and we become the seller to a buyer, an owner occupant, we take our prospective buyer to the RMLO to get processed. The RMLO is not the decision maker. The seller, the investor, becomes the sole decision maker. And RMLO is not licensed to make those decisions. A lot of investors ask those questions, and our RMLO will help give them suggestions. But the final answer rests with the seller, the investor, in making that decision.
Right. But in some cases, they will tell you, right, if this person qualify or don't qualify for the mortgage. Is that
I
right?
will tell you, they shouldn't tell you that,
No.
because the liability is on you as the seller, not them.
So what is the point of using this this company? Like,
Well, the RMLO provides you the financial information and the financial package so that you can make an informed decision. They also help you stay compliant with the SAFE Act by sending out all of the disclosures. But understand, when we sell a home to a home buyer, we become the seller, we are the lender, we become the underwriter, which is the decision maker, and we are the sole decision maker. The RMLO simply helps us stay compliant with the disclosures, and they give us the information we need to make the informed decision.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, at the end of the day, you can see if this person really qualifies. And, I think they have to be making like two, 3 times the mortgage, right? For somebody to really qualify for a loan. That's in the mortgage industry. I don't know on the owner finance. Is it the same rule that you gotta make sure that they're making 3 times the mortgage on
No.
salary? No?
Nope, it's all about the debt to income ratio of the borrower. Has to
Okay,
be reasonable.
okay. So as long as it's reasonable, it's yeah, we talk about being a 45 to 47 debt to income, right?
Well, it can go up as high as 50% based on the income of the borrower and things of that nature. It just has to be reasonable. And that's a very hard thing to define as to what is reasonable. But I think we all can kind of come to the conclusion that if somebody makes $10,000 a month of income and they're buying their mortgage is $5,000, which might put them at 50% DTI, they have $5,000 a month of disposable income left over. That's a bunch.
Mhm.
But if you're making $3,000 a month and your payment is $1,500 and all you have is $1,500 a month left over, that's a lot less than 5,000. So you start to learn this balancing act between what is and what is not reasonable. And you just learn not to push the numbers.
Okay. All right, well, that's a lot of information for today. But thank you so much, Scott. It was amazing to have you today. Usually this training goes until 11:30. I think we answer majority of the questions here. I think you guys, if you learn a lot, say yes in the comments and say thank you, Scott, because he actually donated his half of the day here to help us source this out and actually come out with more information, more knowledgeable. And I think it was so worth it to wake up this morning and being on this training. And for some of you guys, my company can be, you can find me on sucasa-usa.com. That's my website, is sucasa-usa.com. I am going to be adding you guys in my buyers list so you can, going forward, if you need, I provide training, I provide coaching. I actually go through, I have different programs that I provide for people. So if you want to learn more about it, we can set up 30 minutes with you as free consultation on how I can help you. My phone number is 281-806-9743. I know some of you were asking me for my contact information. So that's 281-806-9743. You can find me also, like I say, on Google, sucasa-usa.com. And so I am super happy to help you guys to this, and I'm pretty sure that you probably have more questions here, but we try to pick up Scott's brain as much as possible here. and that was actually amazing. I don't know, I am being helping other people to sell their houses owner finance. So if you need help also selling a house that you're thinking, maybe I do this deal owner finance and you need help with that, just reach out to me. Because I just blasted like 3 properties the other day and I already sold 1. So it's like I sell them very, very quickly because my pool of buyers that I already created throughout the years. Also the marketing that I do Craigslist, I do Facebook, I do a lot of marketing. So that will help you guys to get the buyers. But like we teach today, the buyers are the easiest to find. If you put some efforts and some thoughts to it, I'm pretty sure you can also find yourself a buyer. But if you want to use our services, I can help you out with the buyers, and Scott can help you out with the closing, the title policy, and all of that stuff, being in compliance with the law and all of that stuff. So anyway, thank you for having us, and thank you, Scott, for coming. I don't
Always
know,
fun to
Melania.
get a chance to meet you, Marilyn, talk about things about this industry that we love so much. And guys, I have a lot of opportunity in my career to do a lot of things, and I don't want to do anything else but this. It's fun and it's rewarding.
Yes, yes, yes. So you have a lot of thank yous here, Scott. If you read through the chats, everybody's very grateful of you coming out and spending time with us when you can be with your family and with your wifey and just snoring and cuddling through the Saturday morning. But you're here today. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you too.
Yes, all right. So I think we're pretty much done with the training.
Amazing, Marilyn. Thank you so much. And do we have anything else to add to the chat and the questions?
I don't know. I think here I'm gonna put my contact again, and
The only one I had, guys, was I've been through 2 real estate crashes. You know, how did you pivot? So the first one, I was too young and stupid to know what was going on back in 85, 86, 87, and whatnot. But you look back in hindsight, and it might be why I do single family residential and not commercial real estate. There was another quasi crash not crash, but a minor recession in the late 90s. And you learn how to pivot there a little bit. Then, of course, came the 2008 and 2009 crash. And everything changed at that time. Prior to that, we were doing mostly all cash acquisitions. And we're buying houses at that time anywhere from 50 to 70 cents on the dollar. In the subprime era, 2000, 2008, a lot of people were out just buying and selling houses because if you could fog a mirror, oh my gosh, you could get a mortgage. And everybody kind of went brain dead. When the crash hit in 08, 09, everybody lost the ability to get a loan. Investors couldn't get a loan, buyers couldn't get a loan, and the answer was creative finance. And so we created the disclosures, we put the industry back out there, marketed it to realtors statewide, marketed it to the investors statewide. We created the first loan processing company. We created the first loan servicing company and brought everything together for this industry. And of course, since then, the industry has grown. And because of the changing marketplaces, the changing banking world, things of that nature, there's always an ebb and flow from buying for cash for equity versus buying for cash flow. And it truly today is a cash flow game in learning how to buy homes with creative finance and then selling them with creative finance, i.e. a wraparound mortgage. And so you just learn to have an ebb and flow in the marketplace and to slowly make changes in your acquisition model and your sale model that's out there.
yes, most definitely. I want to say that things, people is very scared about the economy and things crashing right now coming up here. But what I see as an experienced investor is more opportunity. And, actually everything and every change is actually good for us. So anyway, I see a lot of opportunity coming up here. And I just want to say also, just to close this, that we provide these free events every month. We do want to help the community. I am here to help you guys. I love to help people to get started into real estate, and that's my passion. But we're gonna add you in my buyers list so you can receive notification on trainings whenever we have a new training coming up. And it's usually the third Saturday of every month that we put these trainings. So it's totally free. And if you don't see an email from Sukasa, my company, you should be able to check your junk mail, because we do send it out, but sometimes it goes to junk. So on Monday, I am going to add you, and we do wholesale properties every month. Our focus is wholesaling because that I own a wholesaling company and I already have deals coming in all the time. So if you're looking to buy, just check your emails and your inbox. But also for education purposes, this is well worth it. And I have so many people that I invite here every month, and to educate the community and to give back. So stay tuned, guys. Come back next month, and thank you so much, Scott. And we have a great Memorial weekend. Actually, this Monday is Memorial, so
Thanks,
it's
Marilyn. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a great
yeah.
weekend.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
both of you for coming, and everyone for being in our event, and hope have a great and lovely weekend. Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.